Every year, decisions are made under the gold dome that affect how we vote, how we access healthcare, how the community stays safe, and how political power is distributed across Georgia. Most people don't follow those debates day to day, but those decisions eventually impact all of us. Tonight, we're sitting down with State Representative Ann Allen Westbrook to discuss some of the biggest issues currently facing Georgia, what's happening behind the scenes at the Capitol, and what it means for the people she represents here in coastal Georgia.
Welcome back to this episode of the Market Sip. My name is Patrick Donovan from eXp Realty, part of the Johnson Group. I'm here with my co-host Brandon Giebler from Next Move Real Estate. And of course, we love talking to politicians here on our channel and some market stuff, but our day job is actually selling houses. So if you're looking to buy, sell, or you're just interested in what's going on in the market, hit them QR code up top. So hit those codes. The one above Brandon is for him. The one for me is above me. Also, you can go down in the description and it has all that stuff in there. So definitely give us a call if you need any help with that. And I really appreciate everybody coming in. I'm going to tell you what, Brandon, super excited about this one. My wife has known Ann Allen Westbrook for a very long time.
A very long time. That's a forever friendship at that point, right?
Yeah, there you
go. Tonight's guest is an attorney, a community advocate, a state representative serving Georgia House District 163. Since taking office, she's focused on issues including voter rights, the healthcare process or access, the public safety, education, and government accessibility, which is huge right now, I would say. She's been outspoken on major issues currently being debated at the state capitol, including the upcoming special sessions, which I'm curious about myself, and the proposed redistricting efforts. Oh, I heard about that. I don't agree with that. Sorry. Tonight, we look forward to discussing the issues she believes matters most to Georgians and hearing her perspective on where the state is headed. So please help us welcome Representative Ann Allen Westbrook to the show.
Hey, Ann, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are y'all doing? And thanks for that great introduction.
Thank you. I tried.
He does really, really good. Hello, y'all says she is so excited for this show.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Ann, why don't you tell, for everybody that don't know who you are, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and what's your platform? I guess you're not running against anybody. So what are your concerns going on right now?
Sure. Well, I'm Ann Allen Westbrook. I'm a Savannah native. I birthed from coming home from Telfair Hospital until I graduated high school. I lived in Savannah, and then I went off for a few years, went off to school. I went to law school at the University of Georgia, practiced law in Atlanta for a couple of years. And then I was like, I've had enough of that traffic. I think I'll come back to Savannah. And so I've been back here for the rest of my adult life, raising my family here. And just sort of, I went to law school, obviously, and even as an undergraduate, I was a political science major. So I've always been interested in politics, but I absolutely never had on my list of plans to run for office. But that is the direction that life took me in. And a big part of it was some volunteer advocacy that I did with Moms Demand Action, which is part of Everytown. And, that advocacy was very focused on the state legislature here in Georgia. So many times our advocacy efforts are very federal focused because Congress gets so much media attention. Sometimes they're locally focused, which is also great. But this particular focus was on state houses across the country. And I rather naively had just sort of, I think, been going through life thinking, well, whoever's doing these jobs, I'm sure they're, quite qualified. And I got to meet some of those folks and was like, this is not quite what I pictured. And, I'm not sure these guys have this after all. I just didn't really see the values of my community represented up there. And so I got interested in running and eventually ran in 2020 during COVID. I lost a super close election that year and was like, well, I guess that was that. And then when the seat opened up the following cycle again, I decided to go for it. And that's when I was elected. So I am finishing my second term here in the Georgia House. My district is entirely in Chatham County. It's a very, very diverse district, mostly the city of Savannah, but also includes Garden. Yes, what a helpful graphic you have. Includes Garden City. It includes parts of unincorporated Chatham County, just a little bit, and it extends all the way down to the coast to the town of Vernonburg. And so it's a challenge, just in the best possible way, but it's a challenge to represent 60,000 Chatham County residents with a really wide array of needs and interests. So it keeps me on my toes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
wow.
You got some love in the chat, so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, hey, Ann, wonderful to see you. Hearts, claps. Hello, Joshua and Jerry. That's my mom.
Yeah. Hey.
Hey.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it, guys.
Support system here.
Okay, let me ask you something real quick, Ann. So if you went there and you felt like these people were not qualified, what was most shocking to you, I guess, with the people that are representing our area? I mean, you got several different districts that are around here. So what do you feel is most shocking to you?
Well, and not to be too much of a lawyer, qualified. Yeah, qualified. But it was mostly just, the legislature is a part-time legislature. And so that weeds out a lot of people from doing the job. I mean, a lot of people, younger folks in particular, have work that they can't leave for 3 months every year to go serve in the state legislature.
Right.
It's hard for women. Women tend to have more caregiving responsibilities than men. So it's hard for people with caregiving responsibilities to do this work. And so it just weeds a lot of people out. And so while there were people with great resumes up there, people who'd done great things in their careers, it wasn't as diverse as this very diverse community that we have. It leaned heavily male, it leaned heavily white, it leaned heavily older. And that's what I felt was kind of missing. And it's not just, how it looks. It also means that, when you don't have people, when you don't have very many people serving who are still raising children, still navigating education issues, navigating, certain kinds of healthcare issues, certain kinds of affordability issues. It's when you're too slanted toward one group of folks, whether it's generational, whether it's race, whether it's gender, then you're just not going to have a mix of people that can make sure that it's a place that serves all of us.
How do you go about fixing that?
Well, I mean, you encourage people to run, and some of it starts with just kind of locking in as a citizen and helping folks understand this is what your state legislature does. Whatever, if your children are in public school, and most Georgia children are in public school, then this is the body that makes decisions a lot of times about their curriculum. Even that's not always happening. That's not always local level decision making. And absolutely, this is the body that plays a huge part in funding. In fact, education is the largest. If you picture the Georgia budget as like a pie chart, education is by far the largest piece of the pie of Georgia's budget. And so, families need to know that. Certainly we want folks to engage with their school boards and their school district reps, but there's a whole other, body of folks who are making decisions about how your child learns how to read. We've taken up literacy as a huge objective in the legislature. And, it quite literally affects the curriculum that teaches your kindergartner how to read.
Oh, wow. Well, now you say that, and I think about it. So, and I'm going to go to the regular scheduled questions because I know we want to talk about the special session, but I did want to ask about this real quick. Since you guys are talking about education and how it affects the children, how do you think data centers? How do you think you guys are going to integrate AI into the curriculum? Because it's not going anywhere, obviously, and I just don't know. From a standpoint from education, how are we going to implement this? It's life just like the internet when we were growing up. It's totally different ball game, right? So how do you guys plan on accomplishing that?
Gosh, the issue of AI and data centers, wow, we could talk the whole time on that. It's touching.
I've had like 20 episodes on data centers. I'm driving them crazy.
It's super interesting, and I'll be the first to say, this issue wasn't really on my radar until a few years ago when I began serving, and my kind of getting acclimated to it was a bill we took up that was going to, data centers get a tax break in Georgia right now, and despite the fact that they are, I think it's fair to now say that enough people are aware of kind of the issues that they're pretty wildly unpopular. A lot of us use AI. I agree with you. AI is going nowhere. It's here to stay as an innovation. And I think we can be excited about certain aspects of AI. The potential for AI in things like medicine. No offense to the radiologists out there, but supposedly, AI can detect cancerous tumors better than a radiologist can. And so, I think for me, we have to harness all the good because it's a once in a lifetime, at least, innovation, and harness all of that. And also recognize there's potential for harm. There's potential for misuse. When it comes to data centers, it takes data centers to power that innovation. But I haven't met anybody yet who wants to live next to a data center. And so how do we square that? And how do we, we have to recognize the demand it places on infrastructure for electricity, for water. Communities have to be ready for that. And there needs to be community buy-in. Is this something that we want to do? I think one of the other things is the benefits of AI are sort of diffused out broadly. And, but that demand on a local community is very specific and very felt. And it's hard to say, hey, you're giving up this, you're living with this challenge and strain on your infrastructure. You're living with the quality of life stuff because you're getting this other thing in exchange. It just people don't quite feel it. Exactly. As far as education goes, I think it is going to play a role in education for sure. But we also, the point of education is you learn how to do the thing, not that you find an innovation that replaces your ability to do the thing. Humans, there's no substitute for that. And I do think, I'm starting to see this with, with younger folks I interact with, that there's just an expectation of oh, well, yeah, I'll just put it in Chat GPT and then.
That's the right answer.
Right, exactly. And we know.
It's not always right.
That's true. It's often not. And so
it's always right.
It's not keeping up right now. So, this is where I start to nerd out like a, political science major, but, we have to prepare human beings to sustain democracy. And that takes critical thinking, and that takes the ability to communicate, and that takes the ability to understand other people's communication and relate to people. And, we've still got to teach our kids all of those skills. And I think we have to be mindful about the ways AI can bump up against that.
I totally agree
I
with
think
you
that's
on
all
almost
the
everything.
things that are like what ChatGPT and all this stuff is doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kid that graduated early in California as the valedictorian and found out she was illiterate when she went to college because
Wow.
she did everything on ChatGPT, but she
Mm-hmm.
couldn't read. But she was the valedictorian.
Yeah.
The kids don't talk to each other anymore. They just text each other. They don't have a face-to-face conversation. They don't go out and do things anymore. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. There's starting to be, that's another thing we've worked on in the Georgia House is, um, I have a stepson who's 22, and then I have younger children, and so that older generation, we were all sort of early adopters with a lot of that technology, and it is great. It is great to be able to, reach your child in the carpool line and say, "Hey, where are you?" It's great for that kind of stuff, but we are recognizing the drawbacks as well, and
You
that
talking
kind
about
of
cell
face to
phones
yeah, even just from
or the
cell phones.
texting?
Yeah, well, I mean, all of it. I think, like, you know, there's a large degree to which we're kind of all, myself included. I'm not, I think I have a fully developed brain at this age. Gosh, I hope so. But I struggle with it. It's hard to kind of like set your own limits on something that is in your hand all the time, but can give you information at a second's notice. And again, it's kind of like the AI. We want the benefits, but we have to be mindful of anxiety in this generation and
It's
online
cra-
bullying and
My
all
daughter
of the
told me
things.
she was overwhelmed the other day. I'm like, what? We just walked through the store. Like, what is going on?
She said,
Yeah.
"I'm going to the shopping store with my dad. How should I feel right now?" And he was like overwhelmed.
No. But I agree with you. But like I said, I could go on about data centers forever, and I know Brandon does not want to hear that. And probably the audience doesn't want to hear that. But so Brandon, why don't we read the chat and then we'll go to the next question?
Oh my god! I just watched the Aaron Brockovich data center thing too.
See, she's
Yeah,
on board.
she is. So pretty much, we have Lindsay. She said, "I never understood any of how state government worked until I began volunteering for Moms Demand Actions. I've learned so much about the nuts and bolts and how our state legislature works." And then she also said, "ChatGPT doesn't replace your brain." Facts.
They're trying to get it through, though. I'll tell you that much. They're going to put chips in our brains. Anyway, all
Now,
right. So let's move on to the next question. Okay, here we go. So you've been very vocal about upcoming special session and have said it's really about political power rather than legal compliance. For viewers who may not be following this closely, what's at stake in this special session and why are you so concerned about it?
Well, for folks who haven't followed this closely, I'll back up even a little more. There's already kind of a redistricting, which is what the word is for redrawing political maps, arms race going on. First Texas did it, then California responded, and it's kind of been a back
Then
and forth.
Virginia, then yeah.
Exactly. And here in Georgia, our leadership did not indicate that we were going to do that. But then the U.S. Supreme Court issued its opinion in Louisiana versus Calais, which honestly overturned 60 years of civil rights law in the U.S. It gave minority voters, and we've had centuries of kind of like discrimination against minorities in the U.S., and that was remedied with the Voting Rights Act. And so then we saw over the 60 years that was law, we saw a lot of minority representation. Here in Georgia, that's been a lot of Black representation. And that's appropriate because about a third of our state's population is African American. So we should see them reflected in our government. That
Right.
kind of gets back to that issue I was talking about, as a part of my story. We want to see representation of, as wide a cross section of Georgians as we possibly can. But what this decision basically said is the parts of the Voting Rights Act that provided that legislative districts could be drawn in a way to encourage and provide for minority representation, that's essentially over now. They kind of gave the opinion that, well, that was a relic of the past. We don't need it. The late Justice Ginsburg, before she died, when some of these issues were being discussed, said, you don't throw away your umbrella just because it isn't raining right now.
Right.
And that's a pretty apt metaphor. So, here in Chatham County, we have legislative districts that are minority opportunity districts that were designed under the law to give minority voters a chance to really influence their own representation. Here in Georgia, the reason that I said this is not about legal compliance, it's about political power, is no court has ordered us to redraw our maps. No court has looked at our maps and issued the order and said, these have to be redrawn, these are unconstitutional, these are legally non-compliant. And yet we're doing it anyway. And so that's where the politics comes in.
Right.
We have another issue related to our voting machines that we knew we were going to have to deal with. And so the governor issued a proclamation that calls us back to deal with our voting machines, but also has us redraw our entire congressional map. That's 14 congressional districts in Georgia. Those are the folks that represent us in Washington. And then our state Senate and state House of Representatives maps, the folks who, like me, who represent us in Atlanta. And so, it's going to really change the face of representation in Georgia. And, before the Voting Rights Act, we didn't have a lot of minority representation and leadership. And I think it's fair to assume that we are on the precipice of undoing decades and decades of progress.
Yep, we got Lindsay. It's been happening in LA, Alabama, North Carolina, and South Carolina. The South is leading this horrible march of rolling back voter rights and redistricting. Exactly. We are just doing it.
That's a great comment. And it actually kind of makes me think of, another point that I think is worth making is, the Voting Rights Act really recognized that, the South had a particular history. We had a particular history as the old states of the Confederacy. And then we had a particular history as states that, enshrined racial discrimination in our laws in the years of Jim Crow. And so the Voting Rights Act really recognized that, and a previous decision had already been gutted that said, you can't just close precincts. If you're going to do that in a state that has this kind of history, you're going to have to get the DOJ involved and get their blessing first, so we can make sure this isn't racially discriminatory, because that's your history. And so this is just kind of the latest step in the undoing of that progress.
Joshua, don't.
All
right.
He
doesn't get it. He's from the North. He doesn't get it.
Oh, man. So you talked about the voting rights. I'm not going to read that question. I actually want to ask you, so when you go up there on the special session, how do you expect that to go? I mean, do you feel like there's going to be a fight up there? What do you expect to happen?
I mean, there's certainly going to be a fight. And, and I think we've seen some of how this fight has played out in other states. And I think, this is something that we are certainly taking to the voters and saying, you need to lock in on this issue, because it really does affect representation for your community. It will make it harder potentially for you to have representatives who will listen to your specific and your unique needs. So we've got a primary runoff in Georgia on Tuesday, June 16th. And then we will be up there the very next day, the very next afternoon, to start this process. Like most states, Georgia draws its legislative maps based on who has political power. or which party has political power. And so in Georgia, Republicans will draw those maps and they will drop them, and we will have a hearing process, and we're gonna fight it every step of the way. It will be a simple majority vote. So in my chamber, that means you get 91 yeses, you pass. And so, that's what we're looking at. There's also likely to be litigation about these maps, but that'll be after the fact.
Oh, like some suing going on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
I was always curious why. Why are they doing this redistricting stuff now?
Gosh.
I got a couple guesses.
I mean, I think look, I'll get philosophical about it. I think we're just in a broader moment in America about what kind of country are we? Who do we want to be? We are not the country that we were 250 years ago. We're a nation of immigrants. We're one of the most diverse countries in the world. And I think, we all embrace all the wonderful parts about that. I don't, whether it's our culture, our music, our food, all of those things are a mashup of everybody who's here and everybody contributes to it. So that's the beauty of it. But, we're having some growing pains right now about what kind of country we want to be and how we navigate all of that difference. And, there's some backlash going on. I think there's no other way to put it.
I'll be honest with you, talking about voting rights. I mean, it's not only just, redistricting and, taking out representation for, those that have been fighting for it for so long, but you just talk about the money in politics. It's just destroyed the democracy. Basically, people are just doing what they're told by people that have money. The only color that people care about is green. It's very, very frustrating. How do you feel about, because it feels like this is the way our country's going. It's like everything's about developers, and we don't want them to lose money. They can't lose money, but everybody else around, who cares about them? They're not investing. They're only investing with their labor, but they don't care. So how do you feel about that? Because I feel like that is where our voting rights are being taken away. You got the president sending the FBI to the Capitol and then seizing voting records. Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, all of it is a threat to democracy. It really is. I think I so often these days just find myself thinking who does this work for anymore? There's so much burden kind of just passed down to just regular individual folks. And, we know that income inequality is getting to be, is just growing and growing and growing. And I do think that plays out in issues like our housing, like our transportation, access to so many things, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's access to capital to start your small business, whatever it is. So many of those issues are playing out because, America's not working for a lot of people right now. And I think you could certainly draw a straight line from the role of money in politics to that outcome.
Absolutely. And Brandon, we talk about housing all the time. We see, thank God, it looks like home prices are coming down. But why is it? It's because investors are dumping their properties because they know that the rents are not going to be able to sustain. So they're dropping the market and they're dumping Americans' homes for rent. How many investors have you seen, Brandon, selling houses because they can't rent them anymore?
I'm working on 3 right now. It's just not. It made sense a while ago whenever we had that whole influx of traveling nurses and whatnot, but now we don't. And now it's like, sorry, I have nobody to fill your property anymore. And now they're just losing money. So
that's interesting. So you see that in your business that there's not that kind of mobility of traveling nurses or whatever, other workers. That's really interesting.
Well, everything's so much more expensive. I
Yep.
mean, like you have said, I mean, I felt like 3 years ago I was doing great. Like I was like, wow, I've never felt better. And then now I'm like, geez, how do people afford anything these days? Like, I mean, I'm glad I can take care of my bills, but like other people, there's no way. I mean, if it was me 10 years ago when making just army money, there's no way I'd be making it. You know what I'm saying? So
You'd be living on base.
yeah, I would have to. I'd have no choice. Okay, so one that you're this is a subject that you're pretty passionate about, I would assume. So gun violence is an issue that affects communities across Georgia, including Savannah. What specific gun safety measures? Actually, this one really hits home for me and my family right now. We had a friend whose parent got shot yesterday.
Oh,
and we found out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's devastating for the family, right? So gun violence is the issue that affects communities across Georgia, including Savannah. What specific gun safety measures do you support, and how do you balance those proposals with the rights of responsible gun owners?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say follow the evidence on this. That's what I would. That's in my perfect world. That's what we would do, and we would, we'd look at things like, probably the single measure that makes the biggest difference is background checks on all transfers. And I have yet to have a conversation with a gun owner, and I know many, who doesn't think that's reasonable. Most gun owners say, well, yeah, I mean, I bought my firearms from a federally licensed firearm dealer. And so I went through one, and yeah, everybody should, so we can be safe. And that doesn't impinge on any law abiding person's ability, to have guns for all the reasons that our law protects. So I would start there. And, we very quickly sort of get off on tangents about ideology. And unfortunately, this has become, in the political space, become so partisan that it's just sort of an article of faith that if you are of this party, you want this thing. And if you're of the other party, you want the opposite. And that's not, when you get face to face with people, that's really not how it works. Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody wants to send their child off to school and know that they are going to come back to you at the end of the school day. And, and a lot of people just don't have that confidence right now. One thing we've really looked at in Georgia in the 2 terms that I've been serving is school safety. And this was even before the mass shooting at Appalachia High School. We were having these conversations. And, my colleagues in my party, we have a medical doctor who's really been a leader on this and a leader at looking at this like a public health issue. And kind of approaching it like, well, when Americans were dying in car accidents in huge numbers, what did we do? We looked at seatbelts. We made roads safer. We prohibited drunk driving. We made people have insurance, all those kinds of things. And, it's not all of those are necessarily transferable to the gun safety space. But the idea that we look at evidence to determine what will keep us safer absolutely is. And so one of the main focuses we've had in the House is keeping children safe from firearms that are not properly stored, because there's just not the culture around this that there needs to be. It's getting better. I remember the first time another parent asked me, hey, do you have firearms in your house and how do you store them? And this was not, I didn't meet her through Moms Demand Action. My son just made friends with her son at school. And when I was like, oh, something's shifting. And it is, But, the backdrop to that is we also reached a point in Georgia and in the US where firearm deaths became the leading cause of death for children and teens. And you think my children ride in a car every single day. My children swim in swimming pools all summer long. They ride bikes. They do all kinds of things that are great and useful, but also generate some risk. And so think how much unsafe storage there has to be for firearms to pass all of those things our kids do all the time as the leading cause of death. And so our focus has been on that because everybody wants to keep kids safe. And when you start with something like safe storage, you're starting from a place of, well, yes, of course, I have neighbors who have firearms. So it's not this, you want to take all guns away or gun confiscation or whatever kind of like the boogeyman argument is. It's like, no, we know our neighbors have firearms. Many of us do. Many legislators do. But we can exercise those rights in ways that don't endanger people. And so we started looking at tax credits and tax incentives. And, Republicans love anything that reduces taxes. And frankly, that's popular broadly across, all kinds of lines. And so we started looking at that. But we've really bumped up against, some closed minds who really want it to be, no, we can drill our way out of this. We can do, if we do enough school safety drills, we'll outsmart every shooter. Well, you're not going to.
No.
You're not going to gadget your way out of it. And you're not going to, there's got to be some collective cultural change in order for us to get where we need to be on this issue.
So we have some of the comments. Gun violence prevention policies don't endanger someone's Second Amendment rights. Point blank. We hear you, girl. Gun violence is a public health issue! ! Secure storage is key. And if you were raised around guns, you know how to store them. So I'm curious, is there like a common ground that you think with this issue, just because it is so, I feel like when it comes to the government, it's like, meh. And it's like, yeah, we don't, but like there has to be some kind of common ground when it comes to the gun violence and then the gun laws and rights.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue of storing firearms safely, of incentivizing that behavior, and that's when the legislative process can be a really creative and great thing, which is, okay, maybe I don't like your idea exactly how you phrased it, but what if we tweak it a little and make this an incentive? And then we start to make some progress. And we have made progress, even some bipartisan progress. The wheels of legislation turn very, very slowly. But we've passed those bills and we've passed them bipartisan. And we've been led in both parties by a medical doctor in our Democratic Party and a medical doctor in our Republican caucus in the House have kind of been our leaders on this. And it's been really great. And I just think it's an understanding that like, this isn't getting better. And when things aren't getting better, you have to be willing to consider new ideas and brainstorm and work with people you might not necessarily think of as your allies on another issue.
No, I think I like that. And I think, one of the things I thought, where I think, because, when I was in Virginia, and it's not going to sound related, but it is related. So when I was in Virginia, we were forced to go get our car inspected every year. You don't have a choice. It's emissions check every single year, right? Well, in my opinion, if you own a gun, I think you should go train every single year. I mean, when I was in the Army, we trained constantly with guns, and that was gun safety was paramount in the military. You know what I'm saying? So I think, and even in those situations, high stress situations where we're at war, And then the real stuff goes down and people kind of lose their minds. I worry about those situations. If we're in like Kroger, someone pulls a gun out and then everybody around him starts pulling their guns out too. And now we got 5 guns instead of 1. And it just, that is my biggest fear. So that's why I think training is very important. But let's shift gears here. We'll get a little bit to healthcare. So when you talk to constituents in District 163, what healthcare issues come up most often, and what do you think Georgia should be doing differently to improve access and affordability?
Well, I mean, the 2 words that you just said are access and affordability are everything here. And Georgia is one of just a handful of states that has never fully expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act was designed to cover those hundreds of thousands of people who were in the coverage gap. So they made a little too much money to get the kind of assistance that you get, for when you're on Medicaid, but not quite enough to be able to be covered, to afford it on the marketplace. And so that's how that policy was designed to work. But it also, unfortunately, became kind of a political football, and it became something about, well, I don't like the person who proposed it, and we've spent 10 years opposing this thing, so I guess we just need to keep on opposing it. But what we've seen in other states is there just isn't, nobody's come up with any other solution that works as well, that covers as many people. And so, one by one, we've seen states adopt that policy. And when they do, people get on insurance and people's health outcomes improve. And we've never done that here in Georgia. Our current governor has an alternative program that has, it's called Pathways to Coverage. And it's been shown that the vast majority of the money spent on that program has gone to consultants and not to healthcare. I mean, a massive percentage of it, way more than the majority of it, has gone to consultants.
And green is just insane. I cannot stand it anymore.
It's crazy. And, I honestly think it's a situation where it's just becoming clear that particularly in rural parts of Georgia, you've got hospitals closing, and that's because they cannot make the numbers work, because, our law require, if you show up at a hospital, they have to treat you. They can't turn you away. And so, they start, they absorb that cost, and eventually they're underwater, and eventually they close down. People have babies in every single one of the 159 counties in Georgia, but fewer and fewer counties in Georgia have labor and delivery to support mothers and families. Fewer than half of the counties in Georgia have an OBGYN. So you have people traveling long distances to access care. I think there's about a third of Georgia counties that don't have a pediatrician. And so it's a healthcare issue. And you've probably heard that there are, very high rates of maternal mortality in Georgia. It's one of the states where we have the highest rate of mothers dying either in childbirth or in the postpartum period. And so we have made some small strides around trying to cover women for that period of time. But the reality is, if you've been uninsured and then the stress of pregnancy and birth on your body, all of those chronic issues that haven't been treated,
I didn't even think about that.
You just can't fix it all okay, we'll give you 1 year. We'll give you 1 year of coverage under Medicaid so you can have your baby. It just doesn't, it doesn't work. And so we have, again, that goes back to the fact that we have a very diverse population here in Georgia. And, the outcomes don't hit equally. Women of color are more likely to have these bad outcomes. Rural women in Georgia who can't access care are more likely to have these outcomes. And so, that's the cost of of not having health care. There's a human cost. And then also, if you think of it this way, it's an economic development issue. Are you going to move your business? Are you going to start a small business? Are you going to start a big business, for that matter, in a county where people can't see a doctor? It's you just can't make it work. So all of it kind of ends up, all of the economic development ends up kind of clustered in certain areas. And that's why our rural counties are losing population. Young people move away and don't come back because there's
nothing to do.
There's nothing for them. And even if there is, they run into these issues with healthcare.
I didn't think about the second and third order effects of all that stuff you're talking about, but that's crazy. So, Brandon, what's going on in the chat?
I was like, well, now you know. So, we have a lot going on here.
Do it.
So this is healthcare once was cheap. Then Obamacare came in and it got expensive. Once I was paying $2 a week. Now it's $42 a week. I'm assuming that's dollars, maybe, right? And then I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how to say this word, but the South is a conglomerate. Okay, states with the most unhealthy population. Don't do that to us in the South. That's rude. Oh gosh, unhealthy population in the entire United States. Stop coming for Georgia, you guys. Jeez. So healthcare got expensive because Georgia didn't accept the subsidies that wasn't Obamacare. That was the state legislator and the governor. Are they still there? Then the lawyer gets involved, and the doctor can't afford liability insurance. They cat a bus.
All right, I think they're talking about they caught the bus and come to Savannah because of free health care.
Oh, kind of off topic, but what's your thoughts on Rick Jackson as he has made money off the healthcare system?
I think that's a really interesting question. He's a billionaire, and he's made it all from healthcare industry, and so I think it's very fair to question why we have in Georgia a healthcare system that can make some person a billionaire, and yet we're one of the worst states in the country for a woman to have a baby.
Yeah,
we have a high infant mortality in Georgia. So, and there's some really interesting comments in the chat. You don't have to agree 100% with all of them to just be like, you know what, that's not a bad point. There's some really good points that people, are making here. And one of the commenters pointed out the subsidies, by not expanding Medicaid under the ACA, we gave up billions of dollars that would have flowed to us from the federal government to help fund it. 90% of the cost under that would have been federal dollars. And so you think of all of us Georgians, and every April 15th, we're dutifully, sending off our tax returns. We've been paying our taxes all year. And because of decisions made by our leaders, those dollars aren't coming back to us. They're going to all those other states where their leaders made different decisions. But I think there's some really good points here. Somebody brought up the cost of professional liability premiums for doctors. I think that's really fair. I know doctors who struggle mightily with that expense. And this is a broader conversation to have. I think we're about the only industrialized country. We're the only country of our wealth and status in the world that does healthcare like we do it, that treats it like it's just sort of something you buy on the marketplace. It's not that. It's not me going out to say, do I want to buy the Publix brand pancake mix, or do I want to go for the,
Aunt Jemima, or
exactly Pearl Milling Company now.
Yeah, that's the one. Sorry.
Aunt Jemima is what came to mind for me too. I mean, that's not how healthcare works. We don't buy it because it's not an item of discretionary spending. It's something that every single person needs from the moment they come into the world. You know, they're giving your baby the little eye drops and they're checking them out and cleaning them up. And it's that way all the way through until we die. We all need healthcare. And so, you know, I think it's a broader conversation to have. But in Georgia, our outcomes are some of the worst in the entire country. And so we got to stop the bleeding. I mean, not to use I don't know if that's the best metaphor
No
for
pun
talking
intended.
about healthcare.
Well, I mean, apparently we can't stop the bleeding. That's why
Yeah.
we're last. So
Yeah,
I mean, we
exactly.
definitely need to stop it. But I mean, you know, for me, I just think everything has become so about, like I said, money. Everybody's got to get their piece of money. And then we passed this legislation so these people can get money. And then we passed this legislation so these people. And then when we do get money, then the oversight is all jacked up too, right? So now, you know, maybe Georgia got some money for something, but no one's overseeing what's happening to the money. And all of a sudden it's going somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's not. The oversight of that money is that your responsibility, or is that the federal responsibility?
Well, I mean, we have, you know, we have one constitutional mandate as state legislators, and that is to pass a balanced budget every single year. And so we do have that budgetary responsibility, and we have to weigh in on priorities. And we do have some oversight responsibility as well. For example, there's, you know, the Department of Georgia's state government, that's responsible for foster care, found itself in a a massive financial hole, and we had to come in and you know, make sure that got investigated, because these are some of the most vulnerable children in our state, and state government has to work for them because it's quite literally our responsibility. So we do have oversight over those things. I mean, first we start with the budget, but when there are issues, as there were with defects this year, we do have to come in as well.
Wow. All right, Brandon, read that question in the chat.
What about Medicare for all?
You know, I'm open to it. I really am. I mean, I was kind of, you know, that would be more of a federal decision. But that was kind of what I was sort of getting at when I was talking about how differently we do this in the U.S. than you know, Western Europe or much of Asia or South America. So many places where they have enough wealth, you know, to sort of be in our category. They're doing this very differently, and it's, you know, certainly most of those places, or many of those places, they pay higher taxes. But I think it's worth exploring why we live in a country where a catastrophic illness or injury means you start a GoFundMe. You know, and there's
panhandling on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and like, look, it doesn't matter. You've got to be Bezos, Zuckerberg level to be able to weather that and not be wiped out. And most of us, even if we're living very comfortable lives here in Georgia, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you are, but even if we're living very comfortable lives, like, we're not in a position where we're so much closer, all of us that aren't in the 1%. We've got so much more in common on that than we think, than the tiny percentage of folks who influence elections can self-fund a campaign like Rick Jackson. You know, the rest of us, we don't have much of a net if something goes wrong.
I heard that this woman was on she's had cancer medication. It cost $60,000 a treatment. She needed 3 of them.
Yeah.
$180,000. That puts, I mean, I'm bankrupt at that point.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, who's got that in savings? Like, it doesn't make sense, because, it's sort of like, I mean, it's sort of the whole concept of insurance is to sort of pay into this thing that will protect us in the event of something going horribly wrong. But that's not how health insurance is working in the US. I mean, clearly.
Well, we're supposed to have the most educated doctors. We're supposed to have the most wealthiest country, but we're the only ones that are getting screwed over healthcare.
Yeah, it's wild. All right, so I want to ask this question real quick. So, if you're sitting here a year from now and could point to one accomplishment that would make you say this was a successful year for Georgia, what would that be?
I think this healthcare issue would be it for me, where we got to a point where, and candidly, it would probably take more than a year, but if we could get these hundreds of thousands of folks who are uninsured because of a political decision that our leaders have made, that would be a huge, huge win. And I think we would see some results almost right away from making that decision. And I think that would just be huge for Georgians. You asked me, I mean, that's me talking as a Georgian. Me talking as an American, I do see some kind of broader issues around democracy that concern me a lot. You brought up, money in campaigns, and I think all of those kinds of things play into this issue that undermine the institutions that kind of hold up our democracy. So anyway, that's a twofer.
Have a good twofer.
Brandon, you got any more questions? I have a couple. I have one more question, but I'm gonna ask you first.
Do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Let me ask you, who are you supporting in the race for governor? I assume it's a Democrat, but why?
Yeah.
Why?
I assume.
Yeah, I'm supporting Keisha Lance Bottoms for governor. She just came out of our primary with a really, really decisive win in a 7-way race. And so, that's impressive in a state like Georgia. I think the difference between the two parties for me are values based. And, in Georgia, we have had one party control of state government for 20 years right now.
Wow.
And, governor, lieutenant governor, the chambers, they control everything. We have a lot of problems. Healthcare, we've talked about a lot, so there's no reason for me to belabor that anymore. But we've got affordability issues in Georgia. We've got a lack of access. I mean, I know housing is what y'all do for a living. We've got a lack of access to housing. We've got private equity ownership of huge portions of the rental single-family market in a lot of the state. And that's, again, another one of those issues that's bringing Republicans and Democrats to the table because they both see it in their communities. So, we can't tax cut our way out of every issue that we have. We've got a bunch of children in Georgia not reading on grade level. We've got to address that too. So we're spending a lot of money on education. But clearly we aren't doing the right things if we aren't getting those outcomes. So I think it's just, one party has had the complete reins for 20 years, and there's just a real difference in value propositions between the two parties. So, that's why I'm that's why I'm supporting our nominee, because I think it's time for our ideas.
What about the Amanda Hollowell who we're going to have on next week, or the Joyce Griggs runoff? Who you got on that one?
I'm supporting Amanda on that one. I've known Amanda for a number of years. She's got so much great experience in organizing. I mean, she's done budget work, she's done state level work, federal level work, voting. Like she's done work around healthcare. So I think she has a great resume of credentials. I also think, and this kind of leads back to where we kind of started with special session. This is a hard district to win because it is a partisan gerrymandered district. And so I think, she's the stronger of the two. I like both candidates personally, but I think, we've tried a lot of, different candidates, and we've tried, Joyce Griggs's campaign a few times too. And I just think this is an opportunity this year with an open seat, with so much on the line, with so many Georgians suffering, so many Americans suffering, to make a change and get somebody with a great skill set for the job in there.
That's a good answer. I like Amanda too.
You want to finish off the chat there, buddy, or you got another question?
I do have another question. But the chats and everything, everyone's just, we love Amanda, and education is kicking the can down the road. Amanda, all the way. I've known Amanda for years. She's amazing. Amanda is the strongest candidate we've got. It's a split district. My question, thank you, Lindsay, for all your input. So at the end of the day, what do you want the people of District 163 to know about how you approach representing them, especially those who may not agree with you on every issue?
That's a great question, because, my district favors a Democrat. And so, but that doesn't mean I don't represent every single person in the district. And so if you call me with an issue, and, it could be anything, it could be a special needs child and you're depending on services they're entitled to by the state, that is my job. It is my job to serve. And I don't really care which way you vote when it comes down to issues like that. I'm going to be accessible. I'm going to be available. It's, I described my district in the beginning. It's the best kind of challenge, but it's such a privilege to serve. It truly is. You have to love this kind of work to do it. And so, yeah, that's what I've tried to offer my constituents for 4 years now. And that's how I'm going to keep going. I had a town hall a few hours ago before I came on with y'all, and had a really great discussion. Folks who were just engaged and asking great questions. So it is a privilege and a challenge in the best way.
Well, so they warmed you up for this one, so that's good. But, and I want to say, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to say?
No, y'all covered it all. I mean, that was a really, and we went all kinds of places I wasn't even expecting. I could have kept talking about data centers forever, but we'd lose our co-host, it sounds like. So.
Well, I will tell you right now, we got a data center petition in Port Whitworth I'm pushing right now. So I got to take the signs down from my house before the HOA comes after me. But but yeah, so I really, really appreciate you. And it's been too long. We got to get together.
Mm-hmm.
We need to go have dinner again. Yeah, me,
Absolutely.
you, and Lindsay, and your husband and everybody. But I really appreciate you coming on. I wish you good luck. Brandon, you can come along with. I'm sorry.
Fish posh. Fine.
But I really appreciate you coming on, and I wish you a bunch of luck. I'll talk to you soon.
Great conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Right. Wow, good conversation. Good conversation.
Yeah, I like her.
Yeah, I do too. Hey, and I want to say, everybody that's on the chat right now, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. Hey, hit that like button. It really helps us out. I appreciate all the comments, from Ice Cold to hello, y'all, to who else we got in here? We got Jerry, we got Josh, we got JD, we got everybody that came in. I really, really appreciate it, Brandon. I had a good time, dude.
Yeah, it was nice. Every single episode, I feel like I'm learning a lot, which is really nice, because I'm not gonna lie, I was politically ignorant.
Well, me too, and that's what we're learning. We're all learning together. So I think
nice.
And I'm glad that it's good. Next week, don't miss it. We got Amanda Hallowell coming on. We're gonna be interviewing her for her runoff that's gonna be happening later on this month. I think it's June 19th, if I remember correctly. And then on the Savannah's Nook and Crannies next Saturday, we are putting out the best burger in Savannah, ? Is it Green Truck Pub? I don't know. Tell me who you think it is. But we went and covered Green Truck Pub. So you definitely don't want to miss it. And Brandon, is there anything else?
I have nothing. I'm still, I'm still processing the whole conversation.
She's very intelligent. That's why I like talking to her. So, but I really appreciate all you guys watching and staying tuned, and come back for Amanda, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Good night.
Peace out.